Thank you everyone for joining, and we can still see people joining as we're talking. That's awesome. So we are gonna get started. We're definitely feeling good. So thank you everyone for coming in. This is another webinar we're doing here at Magix to really help us maximize the capabilities of everything we're doing. Today is a super interesting webinar, as always, I hope, which we're going to be talking about how to really use all the data that we have inside Magix to identify the biggest low-hanging fruits. So there's tons of stuff we can do with all the data, but we're going to try and focus on specific areas which can really give you guys a lot of value. As always, there'll be a Q&A at the end where you guys can ask anything that comes to mind, specifically about the presentation we did today or not, right? It can be something that has to do with it, but not exactly. I'll be here to answer any questions you may have. So yeah, without waiting any longer, let's jump into it and take it from here. By the way, as we go along, you guys can just pop questions in the chat. Nico and Mana, our two panelists, will be here as well to help me monitor it, and they'll just make sure everything gets answered by order. So you can just go ahead and pop questions as you go along. You can either send it directly to them privately or publicly. That is also an option. So cool. So as we said, we're going to be talking about the lowest hanging fruits, the ones that we can really capitalize on soon and fast. And we can see basically how to get amazing insights about any Facebook account in less than 30 minutes. And what I'm going to be focusing on today is how we can actually get insights, but then also take actionable tasks. Because a lot of the time we get these insights, we can see them, but then we need to execute. And that's where we're a bit lost. So I'm going to be talking really practically how to execute as well and really take it to that level. So what is an account audit? We're going to be examining an ad account performance by analyzing various metrics, identifying opportunities and risks to implement best practices, assessing targeting and placement performance, reviewing the creative and ad copy performance for the entire account. So that's more or less the overview of it before we start diving any deeper. Now, what do we need to do to an account audit? Or why do we need to do an account audit? Ensure all decisions are data-driven. Super important. One of my favorite quotes is, without data, you're just another person with an opinion, right? So we really need to make data-driven decisions. And that comes to the next point where we talk about removing emotional decision-making. I talk about this a lot. But let's say, for example, I have a brand and I feel like my brand should perform really well in France, but it doesn't. I'm going to let it perform longer and longer because I have this feeling. So what we want to do here, we really want to trust the data to understand better. Unveil targeting effectiveness, evaluate placement performance, and identify opportunities to expand. So we're going to be using 6 magic tools to audit our account today, but in general, there's many more that are possible to use. But these are the 6 we're going to be focusing on today. Number 1, the meta dashboard. And we'll talk about this as we dive into it, but this is actually one of my most favorite underrated tools. And we'll talk about that as well. Targeting insights, geo and demo insights, auction insights, creative insights, and ad copy insights. So these are the 6 tools we're going to be focusing on today, but of course, there's many more that we can talk about as we go along. So the first thing is the meta dashboard. Now, this allows us to view performance across the entire funnel. Now, a lot of the times people, before they come to Magix, they don't really know how the funnel is performing. And that's because it's very difficult to understand how your funnel is actually performing. But once we go into this tool, it actually aggregates our data. So for the first time in history, we can actually see an aggregated view for our most important KPIs, right? So for example, if we didn't have this, what we would need to do is export all our data to a CSV file, identify all the ads and campaigns for each funnel, and then start aggregating and doing a weighted mean in order to actually get these metrics. So it's a lot of work that this kind of just helps us to identify in seconds. Shift budgets across your funnel, view your top KPIs by funnel stage, and establish a healthy funnel. So before we talk about the tool, I just want to kind of establish a funnel so we speak in the same language. So the first thing we have is acquisition. This is most of these are the cold audiences, and that's where the majority of the spend go, right? Because we cast a net and we try and grab as many fish as possible. So that's the idea over here. Usually this will have a higher cost per acquisition and highest revenue, because it has a lot of the spend, not necessarily the highest profitability. We can see a large majority of the budget goes there. And for example, in a 30-day time frame, we can kind of like work with health frequencies. So for example, we wouldn't want the frequency to go above 3.5 for top of funnel, because these are cold audiences. We don't want to spam them. Retargeting, right? These are people that came to the website but didn't purchase. This is where we really want to convert them, and this is usually the highest return on ad spend. So here we can let the frequency go a bit higher to really 4.58, and we'll talk about this in a second and why it's so crucial, because this allows us to identify the scalability. And next we have retention. These are people that have already completed a purchase, and here we want to maximize the LTV, the lifetime value of the customers. We know the hardest part of getting a customer is to convert, so once they're converted, we need to make sure we maximize the LTV. So this is more or less a funnel structure. Next, to get to the ARR dashboard or the meta dashboard, we go to the 360 account audit and we select the meta dashboard. Inside the meta dashboard, we can filter. So for example, if I'm doing campaigns for leads or for e-commerce and all these different areas, I can really filter by campaigns, and I can also filter by specific time frames. So that's also important to note, which is crucial. Now, once we did all this filtering, we can identify which KPIs are the most important for us. So for example, any one of these KPIs, anyway that you see this arrow, it's all dynamic. So the first thing I do when I come to any ad account, the first time I look at it, I come to here and I do a 30-day time frame to see a macro view, what's been going on with this account. And this allows me to identify really good opportunities to maximize on. So for example, if we look at this account, we can see very clearly now that he's spending less than 10% of his budget on retargeting. It has the best return on ad spend, or not really the best, maybe the best return on ad spend, but has a very good return on ad spend. Yet the frequency is very low, meaning there's lots of opportunities to go there to maximize the return on ad spend, and there's still tons of scaling opportunity for this funnel that we're not currently utilizing. And that's why it's so important to break down these funnels and understand this macro view of your account. So for me, as a media buyer or agency or whatever it may be, I now know that I want to go and focus on retargeting, put more spend there. I can go ahead and I can scale that, right? And that's why it's so crucial to understand this funnel and to check all the different KPIs. Next, we can come to the strategy status overview, where this allows us to see correlation between two KPIs. And this is super important for scaling, because when we take the budget up, which we can see the amount spent is the gray line over here, and the return on ad spend is the colorful line, we want to make sure we scale effectively, because if I'm taking the budget up, but my performance just dropped super fast, that's not really effective scaling. And that we know we need to pivot back to where we were and try this again in a different strategy. So it's really important to kind of look at these correlations and the momentum between two KPIs. And of course, any KPIs can be selected here. So I can see the correlation between outbound CTR and revenue for one, whatever it may be. Now, what actions can we take based on this data? So we can determine which funnel stage is underperforming and implement changes to improve performance, identify overspending or underspending on funnel stages, and reallocate budgets accordingly, right? This is super crucial to really identify these areas and work towards developing a healthy funnel in order to optimize account performance. This is sustainable in the long term, something we can do on the long term with this. Targeting insights for effective audience segmentation. This is the second tool we're going to be talking about. And here we want to enhance audience understanding. We want to go ahead and enhance retargeting opportunities, understand audience expansion, and gain a competitive advantage. So first thing we can see when we go into the tool, and all of these tools, by the way, are from the 360 account audit, so you navigate them super easily. The first thing we can see when we go into the targeted insights is the top landing pages. And this is something that's actually really crucial to test and see over time, because a lot of the time when we focus on Facebook, we forget about the rest of my funnel. How's my landing page performing, right? How's my checkout page performing? And all those different areas. So this helps us kind of see which ads send to which landing page and how they actually perform. And you can really A/B test different landing pages nicely here. Next, audience size and potential reach. Now, this is also crucial, specifically post iOS 14, where we know there's a big difference with how we used to target compared to how we target today. And we can determine which audience size is working best for us. So we can select a very large time frame if we want, like 180 days, whatever it may be, and we can start identifying those kind of areas. So for example, here we can see audiences that are more than 20 million perform better than audiences that are between 2 million and 20 million. So actually the larger audiences have better performance. And that's something that we want to maybe think about when we're creating, for example, lookalike audiences. Because a larger lookalike is maybe something we haven't tested enough, and therefore we can now test it because we can see larger audiences actually perform better. And this is where Magic has the option to build lookalikes all the way up to 20%, can be super, super effective. Next, we can really see the lookalike, right? So we can see what lookalikes we've been using or what recency we've been using and what performs best for us in order for us to continue creating new audiences. So here, for example, we can see we haven't really spent too much money on lookalikes, only on 0 to 1. The rest didn't really get any spend. So for me, I would say, okay, I want to go ahead and spend check out these different segmentations because I've only spent money on one very specific area of my funnel, of my lookalike audiences. Same thing we can do for recency. We can see what type of recency is performing best for us, and so on and so on. And we can obviously also filter at the top different funnels if you want to only look at a specific funnel. Next, we have the full funnel audience insights, which is really interesting to see what we're currently using and what we're not using. So for example, over here, we can see that broad targeting is taking a lot of the spend, and we can see it's actually performing better than a lot of the other audiences. We can see that lookalike and interest, combination of the two, has got barely any spend. Definitely something we want to test out more and see how it performs over time. So this is all the different kind of areas where we can determine what's working and what's not working. Next, we can also go down and see how the rest of our funnel is performing and look for missing opportunities. So for example, I can see over here a very clear missing opportunity of the high intent visitors that I haven't tried at all. I can really go ahead and make sure to utilize those kind of areas. So what actions can we take based on this data? Adjust targeting parameters for better precision. For example, top performing lookalikes. Identify those lookalikes areas and either scale them up or test ones that we haven't done yet. Reallocate budgets to the best performing audience types in each funnel stage. Use the best recency period for scaling campaigns. Example, target website visitors in the last 30 days. So we can really look at all those different moving parts and put them into one. Next, we're going to talk about GeoDemo Insights, which is one of my favorite tools in this account audit kind of areas. And we can really identify a few things from here. Number one, which countries are actually performing best for me? Which age and genders are actually performing best for me? And what languages are performing best for me? So combining those three elements can really give us a powerful idea. So what we want to do here is spot underperforming audience segments and exclude them from our targeting, identify overperforming audience segments so we can scale them up, and tweak your strategy, your ad strategy across countries, regions, ages, and languages, and so on and so on. And really what we can do here very easily is identify top performing age groups, right? Or two age groups that we think perform well. And then we can very easily split test that, right? Go to the audience launcher, select the audience, duplicate it. On the first one, we select the first age group. On the second one, we select the second one, and really start testing out these different segmentations. So for example, we can see very clearly, we have a very nice map that's color-coded, so we can see where we're spending money and where we have the best return on ad spend. So for example, we can see an account here that for Peru has a fantastic return on ad spend. We can obviously see that it didn't spend a lot of money, but maybe it's just an indicator that it's worthwhile trying to test out this specific country or region a bit more. Next, we can see the age and genders, which is really nice to see. So we can see, first of all, how each age group is performing for us. Really nice data. We can aggregate this kind of like from all the different funnels to see a total holistic view. So for example, if we're looking at age, we can see the best performing age for me is 25 to 34, right? Even though the rest of my age groups took more money, right? All of these age groups spent more money than this age group. So for me, I would want to test this. Let's make sure I duplicate. Next, we can go ahead and say what age, what gender is working best for us, right? Female versus male. So we can see obviously here female is overperforming by a lot. Next, we have age and gender, when we can see these combinations here, right? And we can see female for specific areas. And we can see here, for example, that male is performing badly. But if we look at males between the ages of 18 and 24, we have good results. And that's why this is so crucial to really look at all these data and really dive deeper into all of these different areas. So here we can basically reallocate our budget for top performing countries, exclude underperforming age ranges, and reallocate the budget to the best performing ones, and understand which age genders perform the best, establish your ideal customer persona. Now, what's really good over here is we can really split test this, right? No one's forcing us to do anything. We can say, okay, we don't know if this age group is actually going to be work better if we test it out. Only that, but what we can do is we can duplicate it and start testing out these different areas. Do an ad set or 2 ad sets or 3 ad sets, only for specific age groups, only for specific countries, whatever it may be, and we can test those out very nicely. So now we're going to talk about auction insights, where we'll talk about enhanced ad placements, informed budget allocation, identifying opportunities, and strategic bid adjustments. So the first thing we can see really nicely is the placements, right? Desktop compared to mobile, so we can see where the majority of the spend is going. And we can see obviously how the performance is based on whatever KPI we select. It could be leads, it could be cost per leads, whatever it may be. iOS compared to Android, we can see the big majority of chunk is going into iOS, 88% of the spend, while Android is actually performing better for this specific account. So it's worthwhile looking at this. And then, for example, what we can do is we can split test this. Let's take now the same ad set, keep it open targeting. Let's duplicate the ad set only for Android. Let's see how it performs. This gives us a lot of questions where we can dive deeper. If you go over here to the breakdown view, you can really see a deep breakdown of each and every placement. For example, stories on Instagram for iOS, stories on Instagram for Android, and so on and so on. So we can really play around with that. Next, we have the $1 million question that everyone always asks, ABO compared to CBO, right? So we can really compare these kind of stuff. And look at them so we can see where the spend is going, we can see where the budget is going, where the performance is, and how it performs better for us. So we can see for this account, ABO is outperforming CBO by quite a lot, even though it has the biggest chunk of the budget, right? Usually if it has a more budget, you would expect to see the opposite. So we can see ABO is actually performing really nicely here. And we can also see like what types of budget perform best for you. Now, Magix automatically takes your account and breaks down your budget basically into 3 different segmentations and tell you what types of budget actually perform best for you. And something we always recommend is ABO for testing and CBO for scaling. So that's just a pro tip on the side here. Next, the learning phase, right? Facebook always says learning phase, learning phase, learning phase. So important, the learning phase. And that's something we actually want to look into and see, does it actually generate better results for us? Yes or no? Some cases, yes, some cases, no. But what we get to see when we look at a lot of accounts, there's no clear correlation between ad sets out of the learning phase and actually better performance. Maybe for your account, you'll go and you'll see this is the case. And that's why I recommend you go there. But check this every once in a while. And if it's not the case, you don't need to look into this any deeper as Facebook tries to promote you to do all the time. So here, for example, we can see obviously they didn't spend a lot of money in the time frame selected, but the return on ad spend is actually better. Next, we can see days and hours, right? What days and hours are actually performing best for us, right? Are the days that we just spend in budget and not getting results? Now, this can actually aggregate data from like 180 days. So if we can see, for example, for 180 days that Monday is performing really badly for me, I know there's something wrong and maybe Monday is not my day. So why am I wasting budget there, right? So what we can actually do here, and we won't talk about this on this session. We had another webinar about automations, and we can talk about one in the future. But we can set up an automation to go ahead and say, let's pause my campaigns when it's not performing well and turn them back on. I don't want to burn budget anymore in these hours because I can see I'm not generating any sales, right? So that's why it's really, really interesting to look at this data for us to actually go ahead and execute it. So what actions can we take based on this data? So first of all, we can shift budget away from underperforming ad placements and move it to the best ones. We can use CBO when scaling and ABO when testing the audiences or creatives if the data supports this. If the data says otherwise, then maybe we'll only do ABO, right? But this is an option that we now have because we can look at this data. Reallocate budget from underperforming devices to the top performing ones. So we can see, for example, Maybe Facebook stories is getting a lot of spend, but it's not generating any results. Let's make sure I exclude it. Next, we're going to be talking about creative insights. Inside creative insights, we can compare creative performance across our entire account, find your high-performing creatives and scale them, find underutilized high-performing creatives and scale them, discover which creatives resonate with your target audience in every funnel stage. But this is a crucial area because we can really go in depth here, and we'll talk about this now, but we can really go deep inside and identify which creatives work best for whom, determine which type of creative work best for your account and which ones to avoid. So the first thing we see when we go into here is a really nice aggregation of where my spend is currently going. Images, short video, medium video, where am I spending my money? Do I have any missing opportunities, right? Am I leaving any money on the floor, right? For example, we can see that medium video here is getting the biggest chunk of spend, 70% of the spend, but it's only generating 45.5% of the revenue. Return on ad spend 2.47, while short video and images are outperforming that by a lot. Why not reallocate budget to where I should be? Long videos. We can see we're barely doing any long videos. Why not test it out more? Put more budget there, right? See how it performs. Carousel ads, 6.93 return on ad spend. Spend no money basically, right? Spend more money there and see how it performs. Next, we have the metric over here. We'll take a better look at the metric in a second, but I want to just focus on the smart filter functionality over here, which is really, really nice to see. Using the smart filter, number one, we can look at different funnels, right? If I'm a pro account, I have different ads for different funnels. I don't want it to mess up my data. So I want to look only at acquisition, right? I want to see only the creators for acquisition, how they perform. But then I want to take it a step deeper. I want to see how do my acquisition ads perform for the age group 18 to 24. So I just select here, apply filters, and then I can see which creatives perform best for which age groups, right? I can actually identify those opportunities. I can aggregate those opportunities and then do specific campaigns for specific age groups, specific genders, specific placements, whatever it may be. I can really deep dive into this data. So that's why it's really, really nice to see. And then you have this nice graph over here where you have revenue on the top left, you have spend on the top right. You can change this KPI, of course. But the idea just to understand is the top left is basically our scalable creatives, right? The ones that didn't spend lots of money but generated high amount of revenue. That's where we want to be. The ones at the bottom right are the ones that spent a lot of money but didn't generate a lot of revenue. And we don't want to kind of focus on them too much. Next thing we can do really easily is once we click on a creative, which we identified, and something just to clarify here, this is a creative, not an ad, meaning we aggregate all the creative data into one place, right? So if I have a specific creative on different ads, on different campaigns, we aggregate all the data and show this data per creative, which is super, super crucial to understand. So from here, I can go ahead and click open in ads launcher and actually launch this into a bunch of different ad sets with different copy. So I can scale up my top performing ad. And this is what I'm talking about all the time, that we want to identify insights and we want to execute based on these insights. So once again, we have something very, very similar for the ad copy. For the ad copy as well, I want to understand what works best for me, which funnel, which gender, which age group, which format, with emojis, without emojis. I can really test all these different segmentations out, right? Because I think we all know that if I have a brand that fits anyone from 18 to 65 plus, I don't speak to the 18 to 24-year-olds the same way I speak to 65 plus. They speak a different language, right? 18 to 24-year-olds are probably only focusing on UGCs now, right? They're only focusing on that type of content, while 65 plus are more used to the old school ads. So maybe we have found that they actually perform differently when we look at them, and it's really important to look at that data. In addition to that, we can see what type of copy works best for us, short, medium, or long, right? We can identify now, again, the majority of the spend is going in medium, while long and short are actually performing better. This is also something that's worthwhile looking into and seeing how we can identify opportunities here as well. And if you're wondering what's classified as short, medium, or long, you can just log into Matrix and you just hover over this and it will show you exactly what gets classified as what. And once again, we want to make it easy to execute. So clicking on the copy, open in Ads Launcher, and you'll be able to mix match it with a bunch of different creatives to go ahead and basically scale this up. And then from there, you can launch it into existing ad sets, existing campaigns, basically scaling up your top performing copy. So what actions can we take based on all this data? Identify our best performing creatives and launch them into existing ad sets. Use the filter to establish which creatives and ad copy work best with each funnel stage. Identify our top performing piece of copy and launch them into existing ad sets. So we really want to identify these areas and make sure to maximize them as much as possible. Which, as you guys know, by the way, if you don't know this now, post iOS 14, there's more and more studies showing that the biggest part of your Facebook marketing is your creatives. So it's crucial to identify what types of areas work where and how to maximize on these kind of potentials. So let's summarize everything we talked about today to kind of get a better understanding of how to audit an account very fast and get a lot of actionable items to execute on. So number one, we have the meta dashboard. We want to establish a healthy funnel. We want to make sure we have a healthy funnel. We want to make sure we're maximizing on the retargeting and the retention. We want to make sure we're not overspending on retargeting and retention, which a lot of the times we kind of like audit accounts and we see frequency of 15, 16, 17, 20, 25 on retargeting and retention, which basically means the same people within like 1, 2, 3 weeks are seeing our ads 25 times. And trust me when I say if they haven't converted after 8, 9, 10, 11, they're not going to convert after 14, 20, right? So let's make sure we don't throw money away there. Targeting insights. Use data to target your best audiences, right? To really identify what audience is actually working for me and jump into that. Geo and demo insights. Reallocate our budgets to our best performing countries and ages and genders and all these different areas to really focus on. Auction insights. Optimize towards the best placements. Creative insights and ad copy insights we just talked about now to really identify those opportunities. Now, 2 things we can do here. Number one, if I'm an agency, this is such fun for me to audit an account within 20 minutes and send it to a client. If I'm an e-com owner or media buyer for a company, right? It's so easy to identify these opportunities and get a better return on investment. So that's why it's 2 areas of here that we can really focus and maximize using these account audit strategies. So thank you so much for listening. Appreciate everyone showing up. It's been fantastic with everyone being here. We're going to do a Q&A now, as we always do. This is where you guys can ask any questions that come to mind regarding today in particular, or anything else that comes to mind. Nico and Mana will organize all the questions and ask by order. So thank you so much. And yeah, stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Danny. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the questions that we have here. And the first question is, what exactly does it take to get out of the learning phase? It's such a scary place to be in, but now that we have all this data, we know that it's not that intimidating. But what does it actually take in order to get out of learning?
Yeah, so according to Facebook's official thing, you have to get 50 conversions within a week. Which has in a specific ad set, right? As most of you know, to get 50 purchases in a specific ad set within a week, you have to do very high budgets, right? So there's a lot of theories in saying that's kind of Facebook's way to get you motivated to push more money down your ad sets. But I think the most important thing here is not the learning phase, it's to look if the learning phase has any impact on your account. If it doesn't, then you shouldn't even be talking about it. If it does, okay, then we can start looking into it. But the first step will just be, does this even have any impact on my account?
Okay.
Great. We've got another question here coming in asking that, are there any new upcoming trends in targeting and creators that we should know of?
Yeah, so great question. So first of all, I think you guys probably know this, but more and more data indicates on UGCs, right? User-generated content. We can see it very clearly that it's performing the best now. We can see Reels are in a very, very strong momentum. So definitely do creatives that can work on that format. Very, very crucial. Actually, next webinar, we'll probably talk a lot about UGCs in that whole area and how to create them correctly. So it will be a nice webinar about that as well, most likely. But we'll keep you guys posted on that. But I think the main thing in creators to focus on currently is definitely UGCs, user-generated content.
Okay, great. We have another question here from Robert in the chat. It says, so if I have a 2 ROAS on my ad account and I set up the structure properly with appropriate budget sizes for the whole funnel and have a good quality copy and creatives, am I pretty much guaranteed to push my return on ad spend to 3 or 4 range, between the 3 and 4 range?
Yeah, so I like guarantee questions because I think anyone that ever guarantees you something is probably trying to scam you, right? Because no one knows the future, what's going to happen. But it's a statistical game, right? We work about statistics, and that's how we are. We're rational people. And statistically, if you look at the data and you see what's working for you, and you go ahead and make the adjustments, you will drive better results. So I think that's the name of the game, and we need to really focus on that and optimize that. If that makes sense, if that answers your question, fantastic. If not, you can obviously ask a follow-up as well.
Great. So Dennis also asked the question saying, how would you optimize an account that is spending as low as $10 per day? And then which Magic's package would you recommend for managing an ad account that has only $10 a day spent?
Yeah. So $10 a day spend is a hard one, right? Because we can't really adapt, we can't really scale up even if we want to. I'm assuming that's the question, right? Like very strict budget. So I think when we talk about small budgets, what's crucial to understand is what's working for us and to exclude what's not. So the main area I think we can focus on, first of all, is kind of like the geo demo insights. And if I see, for example, that specific age groups are not working or a specific age group is working, let's put our resources towards that, right? Because we don't have a lot of resources, so we need to make sure every dollar counts. So I think that's the main area I would focus on. Now, if we're looking to make the best return on investment for the Magic's packages, what I would recommend doing is to kind of like separate them because you're on a small budget and focusing on and buying a package, for example, that allows you to do the data, the 360 account audit, and the automations, which I think the automation will be specifically crucial for you when you're trying to save every dollar as well, because you can do like an automation on the ad level that if you're not getting clicks, stop the bleeding. So it very quickly allows you to save the money and reallocate it to what's working. So I think those 2 areas will be where I would focus on. Obviously on the smaller package and obviously as you scale with Magic's, it will scale with you, but I will definitely start there.
Okay, we have another question here from Robert, and he's asking, how exactly do we get a lower CPM?
Okay, so CPM, it's a great question. So there's a lot of different components when we talk about CPM. So just something to understand, there's 2 main things. Number one, there's the bidding, right? There's millions of different marketers around the world, and they're all trying to bid against each other in order to get the placement, right? And that's something that Facebook takes into consideration, basically the millions of different people and to charge it. So if we target something more specific, usually the CPM will be higher. In addition to that, there's a second component people don't talk about as much, which is your Facebook health score. Inside your Facebook health score, basically Facebook takes that into consideration when calculating your CPM, right, and allowing you to win auctions. So you can go in there and actually check that and see, for example, if my health score is bad, what can I do to improve it? That can actually help you get a lower CPM. And number 3, which I'm assuming you guys know, but social proof, right? So if Facebook can identify this as good content, you get lots of likes, lots of comments, lots of those kind of areas, it can lower your CPM. And that's why Magic's, when you launch something, we automatically use post ID, not ad ID. So all your social proof goes with you to your next campaigns and ad sets, allowing you to actually maintain the social proof, higher conversion, lower CPMs. But personally, I'm never the one to look at CPM as my main KPI. It's a great assisting KPI, but at the end of the day, you want to get performance. So if an audience has more expensive CPM, but performs better, who cares, right? That's the main thing we need to see. If you get low CPM but you don't get performance, doesn't really help you, does it? So I think CPM is a nice way to kind of like look as an assistant KPI, but I wouldn't obsess over it as a main KPI when we're talking performance marketing. If you're just trying to get impressions, then it's a different story. But I think most of the people here are focused on performance.
Great. Nick is also just asking, what's the better option, to maximize volume or to maximize the purchases? So how do we optimize? What's the best way?
Are you talking about the bidding strategy or what? Yeah. So bid strategies. I don't say there's a better one. I say test, right? Test and see what the data tells you. I like to test different areas and see which bid type works best for me. There's actually a great tool also in Magix we didn't cover today called bid testing, where you can test out a bunch of different bids on a specific ad set. It's kind of like a scaling strategy and see what actually works best for you. So there's no one truth here. So I just think it's important to kind of understand that.
Okay, we have another question here from Robert. He says, should we ever use Advantage Plus campaigns? And could you elaborate on when is it good to use and maybe in some specific cases?
Okay, so great question. And actually about 2-3 weeks ago now, I don't remember exactly when, we went to the Meta offices in Tel Aviv and we had a session with their product managers. And we talked about all the different products that Meta are releasing and Magix are releasing and how they can make sure we have a smooth integration. And we talked a lot about the Advantage Plus. And once we actually spoke with the product managers and actually dove deeper into it, so the biggest issue with Advantage Plus is it focuses a lot on your retargeting and retention audiences, right? So it steals the conversions from the normal retargeting and retention campaigns, and it makes it look, in theory, like it's coming from the top of funnel because Facebook doesn't break down where the audience is coming from. So we actually told them, if you would allow us to exclude middle of funnel and bottom of funnel audiences from Advantage Plus, then it can be relevant. But the problem is currently the way it's structured, it isn't very relevant because it doesn't tell you where the data is coming from. And actually, when we put it into we have the one-click report, which allows you to see new customers versus returning customers. We saw that if you exclude returning customers, the Advantage Plus campaigns actually performed really badly. So that's what they do. They really maximize the retargeting and retention there. And it's a bit of a tricky area to focus on. Would I ever recommend using it? If you don't feel like building your own funnel and you just want Facebook to do everything for you and you're working with very small budget, you can use it. I personally like to be in control of how much budget I put into every section, so I know what's scalable and what's not. But if you want to have no control and you just want to let Facebook do it and you don't want to touch it and you're working with very small budgets, you can go with it. Never have it in addition to retargeting and retention campaigns because they will compete with each other and you won't be able to know where they're coming from, leading to high frequency, high CPMs, and it doesn't end up well.
Great. So Dennis is saying, I'm facing difficulties in tracking my instant forms and messages to apps using the UTM parameters and GA4. How would you recommend to track these if I can't afford the automated conversion package? He's also saying that for website leads, he is using the conversion API to track.
Yeah, we'll need to look deeper into your specific area and how exactly it is. But in general, just so we know UTMs work based on third-party cookies, right? What happens? You click on a website, it takes you to a URL. Inside that URL, you can see the UTM, and that gets captured. That gets captured based on the third-party cookie used Google Analytics script on the website. Since iOS 14, and specifically now more and more Firefox, Chrome is doing it soon and so on, third-party cookies are not being used anymore. So therefore, UTM is not what it used to be. It can't really be very effective in any way, right? It's still nice to have. I wouldn't say turn it off, right? If we have it and it gets some data, that's fantastic, but it misses a lot of the conversions. And then what happens is GA just attributes it to direct none or to organic. It doesn't actually mean direct. It means that Google wasn't able to attribute where it came from. So for a specific use case, we would need to look at it. Unfortunately, the real answer is you need to maximize first-party data. You can build a solution, you can work with other solutions, and so on, but you need to start utilizing first-party data in some way or another.
All right, next question is again from Jefferson. It says, I have a few ad sets that are performing very well in one campaign. How can I scale that campaign?
Okay, so first of all, there's a few questions we need to ask ourselves before we can give an answer. But number one, is it an ABO campaign or a CBO campaign? Is it a top of funnel or bottom of funnel? Right? Once we understand those kind of areas, we can focus on it. So because you asked on a campaign, I'm assuming it's a CBO campaign. If not, then let us know. And I'm assuming it's top of funnel because bottom of funnel is a bit more difficult to scale. So there's a lot of different strategies that you can use to scale. Number one, obviously increasing the budget. That's the most simple way to scale. Number two, which not many people do, but actually performs really well, and it's more consistent over time, is duplicating ad sets and campaigns. Now, this only works if you're targeting a large audience of millions of people. Because if it's a small audience, you're going to be bidding against yourself. But if it's millions of people, the overlap is irrelevant because you're never going to reach millions of people, right? So that's why it's fine if it's a big audience. And number three, well, not there's many more, but just number three is another example. Magic's had a tool I talked about it earlier called bid testing, where you can click on bid testing and then basically select a top performing ad set. And then what it allows you to do is it duplicates that ad set with multiple different bids and kind of starts testing that out with different bids and identify those kind of areas. Now, why is that good? Because when we take different bids of a specific ad set, aka an audience, we segment out that audience for different people, allowing us to identify different opportunities to go into. In addition to that, if it's a lookalike, for example, so let's say you have a 3% lookalike that's performing well, you can duplicate that lookalike and now do 5%, 6%, 7%, 10%. You can then go ahead and take that lookalike and mix it up with an interest using the audience studio. So there are different areas to go there, but the three easiest and simple ones is increasing the budget, duplicating, and launching a bid test. By the way, I wouldn't do this manually. I would automate it. You can do an automation to duplicate ad sets or campaigns, and you can do an automation to increase budgets. I would recommend doing as little as you can manually, and the majority of your work should be automated at this stage.
Great. The next one is saying an account audit only supplies basically clues to how to create new ads or campaigns. And it's saying because we are scaling, because when we are scaling or running ads, it depends on particular ads instead of a general audit index for the whole account. So I'm not sure if that's just a statement or a question, but do you have any feedback regarding that statement, Danny?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe you can ask it again as a clarification, and we'll get back to it on the next one because I'm just not sure I understand the question there.
All right, while we wait for that question, we have another one from Nick, and it says we run 300 ad sets per day and some of them compete against each other. Is there a way to see if this is affecting things?
So first of all, how do we know they compete against each other? Or I'm assuming you're talking about bottom of funnel, because top of funnel, again, millions of people, you can run 5,000 ad sets a day. Unless you're spending millions and millions a day on ad sets, you're probably not going to reach, or hundreds of thousands a day, you're probably not going to reach the same people. But is there a way to see if it's affecting performance? Yes, frequency, right? What's frequency? Frequency is impressions divided by reach. So if the reach is limited and there's lots of impressions, the frequency will go up. If we see frequency going up and performance going down, we're not affecting things, right? And we're using the meta dashboard that we talked about in the beginning. You can really break that down by funnel and identify those kind of opportunities. So, okay, if I can see now my frequency is going up and performance is going down, I have an issue. If I can see my frequency staying the same, or I can see my frequency is going up but performance is also going up, fantastic, right? So I think that's a good way to identify those kind of areas. Yeah, I hope that answers. If not, obviously you can ask again as a follow-up.
The next question is also from Nick, asking, is there an area where we can see ad fatigue?
Yes, yes. So if we go to the creative insights, I didn't show in this presentation, but you go to exactly the same creative insights and you scroll down, you can see how a specific creative performed over time, over the last 4 weeks, for example. And then you can see if it was going down, up, and then suddenly started performing slowly going down. That's kind of where we start identifying ad fatigue. And then that's where we want to actually go ahead and make sure we create new ads and we swap it and so on and so on. Yeah, so I think that's number one. Number two, I will just automate. I will just automate when something stops performing to reduce the budget, to turn it off, sorry. So I will just use that automation, because if something's running for 2 years and it's performing well, who cares? If it stops performing well, that's when I care and I want to actually take action.
Then just a response on your previous question that Nick spoke about. He did confirm that it is top of funnel and they all are all the same creatives.
For which one was this? For the scaling one or for the?
Yes, from the previous question.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah.
Top of funnel. Yes, they are the same creative. Yeah. So I think, top of funnel, that's why I wouldn't worry about it too much. And I think that's the way I would look at it. If your top of funnel frequency is relatively low, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you can see the top of funnel frequency going through the moon and performance is dropping, that's when I would say, okay, we have a problem with the overlap.
We have a question from Chris. He's asking, how do you use first-party data and what does that mean practically?
Okay, so first-party data is data that you provide, basically you own and you provide the marketing channel, aka Facebook or Google, whatever it may be. So there's lots of different ways to do it. The way Magix does it is we basically send your data from your website to a subdomain which sits on a server. Okay, and because it's on a subdomain, we're able to connect first. We're able to have your main domain speak to your subdomain with no issues. From that subdomain, we create an API gateway back to Facebook. It sounds complex. It sounds more complex than it is, to be honest. But that's basically the idea of it. The idea of it is, instead of Facebook taking the data, we are now providing the data. And that's the big difference in context. It sounds like a small difference in context, but it's pretty big in a technical and legal point of view, if that makes sense.
The next question, just a bit off topic. Dennis is asking if we offer remote or mid-level positions for Facebook at Magix.
Yes, we have media buying positions, account managers, success managers, a lot of different things. You can go onto the website. There's open positions there, and you can apply. You can also look on Magix LinkedIn. We publish open positions there as well, and you can apply there as well. So you have either on the website or on LinkedIn.
Okay, so this goes back to the question earlier that we didn't quite understand. It says an account audit only provides data for the whole account for a period of time, but sometimes it's not accurate in a specific campaign, right?
Yes, and that's exactly why we give the option to exclude a specific campaign. So, for example, if you had an issue with a specific campaign and you want to make sure you're not spending, you're not looking at that campaign's data, you can exclude that specific campaign's data by just saying exclude campaign ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you'll look at data without that. Or the opposite, if you want to look only at a specific campaign, you can also do that. So there are lots of options there. And obviously, you can also look at whatever time frame you want. So if you know, for example, the last 2 weeks you had issues with your campaigns data, whatever it may be, you can look at data before that. So there's a lot of different options, and it's really customizable and dynamic depending on what you need it to be. Okay, fantastic.
So there's one more question here asking, how do I ensure that my frequency do not decrease performance due to audience fatigue and ad saturation?
How do I make sure the frequency doesn't? Well, it's not something to make sure the frequency doesn't increase performance. Frequency is just there to help you indicate something happens. Again, frequency is impressions divided by reach. So if we have the frequency is too high, it's either high because too many impressions for too little reach, meaning there's too much budget going into a specific audience, or because the reach is too small, right? And then we need to expand the audience. So the frequency is there to help you indicate that you're not doing one of those two issues, that you're not facing one of those two issues. But it's there just to help you identify that issue. And then obviously you can say, okay, my frequency is too high. I can either say I'm overspending on retargeting, and I can also identify this by saying, okay, maybe I have 30% of my budget's going on retargeting. It's not sustainable. So I want to reduce the budget on retargeting and reallocate it for top of funnel. That's number one. Number two, I can see, for example, I don't know, maybe my retargeting is only spending a small percentage of my budget, but it has very high frequency. Then I need to look at my retargeting audience. Maybe I'm only doing people that made an initiate checkout in the last 14 days, and then that audience is very small. So I want to expand that to last 45 days or all website visitors, whatever it may be. And then I basically increase my reach, and therefore my frequency will come down. Awesome questions. Really enjoyed the Q&A. It was fantastic to have so many questions. Thank you guys for asking and participating. Thank you everyone for showing up. It was such fun as always. Next month, we'll also have another webinar, super interesting. We're probably going to have a super interesting guest speaker coming as well. So we'll give you guys more information about that soon. And that's it. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.